Well, hello there everyone and welcome to a new video over here on Anton's hardware channel. Now this, well, as you can see, it's not in the box now, but it's the box itself. This is the Sound Blaster ZxR sound card by Creative, and this was the pinnacle of sound cards that you could buy about 8 to 10 years ago. But is it still as good as the box says it is? Let's find out in this video. But before we start, I wanted to do a service announcement, and it's been really hot in the Netherlands for the last couple of weeks. Even so hot that over here in my beautiful attic, it has become, well, sort of 35 plus degrees. So hot that I didn't want to record. I couldn't record a video because the sweat was pouring down. And 35 degrees plus is way beyond my comfort level. So I just wanted to lay in my little pool and do nothing. But now the heat has subsided a bit and it's gotten a bit cooler. It's 28, 29 degrees now here in my attic. It's still way above my comfort level, but it's enough to start recording. So without further ado, let's go and over to the Sound Blaster ZxR. So as I said before, this is the Sound Blaster ZxR. It's in my system test bench over here. It was a really expensive sound card. When released it was more than 200 euros. And it was supposed to have a signal to noise ratio of 124 decibels. Now that's a very high number indeed. Most sound cards don't pass, well, about 115, 110 decibels. So it's, on paper, it's a really good sound card. The ZxR was part of the Z series, which was a follow-up of the Recon 3D series. Now, this chip and the previous series, the Recon 3D, all have the same audio chips, which is the Core 3D. Now, the Core 3D is a Core3D DSP, which should unload your CPU with Soundcast and assign them to the Core 3D chip. But I'm not really sure if that happens these days, especially with Windows 10 making it really hard for drivers to directly address the hardware itself. So now the only thing that makes a sound card worthwhile these days is if you use really good components and a nice driver interface. Now, on paper, this sound card has really good components. It has some Burr Browns in there. It has everything that a good sound card should have. So it's got all the good things on paper, but how good is it in reality? But before we go to there, I wanted to go through to the specifications with you. All Recon 3D and Z series share exactly the same Core 3D chip, but the Z series has better components than the Recon 3D, like better op amps, better digital analog converters. Within the Z series you have three models, the Z, the ZX and the ZxR. Now the Z and the ZX models are in fact exactly the same. With the external volume button added to the ZX is the only difference. The cards themselves are identical and they even share the same model number. I reviewed the Creative Z some time ago and I thought it was a decent card. Nice solid metal shroud, a nice audio quality with 160 decibels signal to noise ratio and a decent driver interface, but I'll get back to that a bit later on. There were some Cirrus Logic digital analog converters on there, and of course there is a big red LED to make it look cooler. The ZxR is the best card in this lineup and it uses the best components, like some Burr Brown PCM, digital to analog converters, some Japan Radio Company or JRC's swappable op amps, and also some op amps from National Semiconductor, and a really cool Texas Instruments TPA 6120 headphone amplifier. Now this card also has a daughter card to add SPDIF in and output, as well as 2 RCA inputs. Again, this is powered by Burr Brown's, and this time is the PCM 4220 stereo analog to digital converters. Cool thing is that this daughter card has its own Core3D processor, but if that's for the added audio quality or that a single Core 3D chip cannot handle all those inputs and outputs, I don't know. The ZxR, unlike the Z, does not have an LED. Now if that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave that up to you. Like the Omni 5.1 and the Asus Radstrix Pro, there is a nice volume knob. Now, I made a video of those two sound cards a bit earlier, and I like the advantage of a big external volume knob. It helps you to adjust your volume when playing games because you don't have to alt tab to your desktop to adjust the volume. This ZxR also has a built-in microphone in this volume knob, just like the Omni 5.1. Now I despise the Omni 5.1, partly due to this built-in microphone. So what about this one? Let's take a look at the driver interface to find out. And this is what the driver interface looks like. Now we have seen this interface a lot of times before. It's used in the Sound Blaster Z, that's something understandable, but also in the Omni 5.1 and a lot of other former generation Sound Blaster series. And well, it's a sort of standard interface. You have your SBX Pro Studio with all the things: surround, crystallizer, bass, smart volume, dialogue, plus everything you want. CrystalVoice, of course. Take some time to switch. You have the CrystalVoice, which I will show you a bit later on because I think it's annoying, but it's nice to see if all the features work. Now Scout mode, I haven't used it, and I think it's absolute rubbish. Here you can switch the headphones to speakers, well, which is always nice. I leave it to headphones because I have the headphones plugged in at this moment. And if you want to use the encoder, which is very nice to see, but it is a software solution, it's not hardware. So all the encoding is still done by the CPU and not the sound card itself. A mixer to see which channels are used, an equalizer, and some advanced features. Now let's head over to the CrystalVoice. And let's enable CrystalVoice. First of all, the smart volume, which is a nice feature because my voice, as you can hear, this is via the microphone that's inside the volume knob. The volume will keep on constant. Noise reduction is something that really works, so I'm glad to see that one. And the acoustic echo cancellation is also something that, well, in my opinion, works. Here you have the focus. If it has a narrow beam or a wide beam, everything outside of the beam won't be picked up by the microphone. So maybe if your wife stands beside you screaming, you can set it to even more narrow. Let's leave it back there. All those functions are very interesting and do work, but there is, again, as I said in so many other videos, something really annoying.
That's this function. Why would you want to use this? You have several other settings.
Let's turn it off for a moment. You have several other settings. I think it's rubbish, but it's in here. So how good is this sound card? Well, if we look at the results from the Rightmark audio analyzer, we can see that it gets a very good, well, it's a very good score indeed. There are some minor points, and the main one that I wanted to pick out is the frequency response, because that only gets a good. And when we look at the graph that comes with this good, we can see why it gets this good. The bass is somewhat on the downside, and you had to compensate. If you have an equalizer and you want to do that, you can compensate for that. It also has a sort of curve at the higher tones, the higher frequencies, but as you can see at 20,000 kilohertz, the drop isn't that big, so it's not much of an issue there. well, during my listening sessions, I found that it was a very pleasant sound card, and despite being a bit underpowered in the bass section, I still found it to be a easy listening. I could hear that the sound card had everything under control. There was nothing underpowered. It was a nice, consistent across all songs. The more soft one, and louder songs, it had everything under control, and it could drive my Biodynamic MMX 300 with ease. And there were some points that I even struggled to hear differences with my EVGA NU and this sound card. Now, I'm not saying that this sound card is as good as an EVGA NU, but it was getting there. It isn't bad at all. Now, during the gaming sessions, you could have a real benefit from the higher section that were, well, less compromised, so to say. I could hear enemies creeping closer. I could hear my friends more distinct. I could even have more of a 3D placement without the surround settings turned on. And it was a nice and pleasant hearing. But after some time playing games, the lack of bass, well, I did sort of start to notice it. It wasn't as open. It wasn't as nice to hear. To hear. It wasn't. Well, how should I put it? It wasn't open. It wasn't the same power across all frequencies, and especially during explosions, the explosions lacked power. So this is definitely a good sound card to have, and I would recommend it were it not for the new price. If I look at Amazon these days, it is over 200 euros. And now you can get the EVGA NU cheaper for that, and I would definitely recommend that sound card. But let's take a quick look at the pros and the cons that I have. The pros, well, the sound quality of the sound card is really good, except for the missing bass sometimes. Also, what's really nice is the large sound knob that you have. It was a definite improvement, and if you have a keyboard that doesn't have the volume knob on it or switch, so you cannot regulate the Windows audio, it is a nice feature to have. Also, what I liked about it is that it's 2 cards, but it's something as a card nerd for me. There are some downsides to this card, and the major downside is the driver interface, which is a bit dated. And what I really disliked about this sound card is the fact that it has this sound morphing feature. And I've said it in all my videos previous to this one, why should you even enable this feature in a driver interface? This isn't 1990 anymore, when that was supposed to be cool. Come on people, even back in 2012 this wasn't cool, and you should get rid of it. Why enable it? Get rid of it. So I'm sweating again at this moment because it's getting really hot in here, despite my thinking that I would cope with the heat. Thank you for now. That's it for me for today, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you for now. Bye bye.